Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a lost generation. South Africa's president calls for a crackdown on the illegal sale of alcohol to underage drinkers as 1,000 mourners turn out for the funeral of the 21 teenagers who died mysteriously in a nightclub last month. Also, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Protests calling for the restoration of civilian rule continue in Sudan as demonstrators remain sceptical about the military's proposal to make way for civilian rule 8 months after an army takeover. And an international collective of dancers are pushing back against the concept of Afro dance, saying the term glosses over diversity, and in their performances here in France, they're trying to emphasize the variety of physical expression from the continent. But first, on Wednesday, mourners flocked to the funeral of the 21 young people who died in a nightclub in a South African township last month. It's still not clear how they lost their lives, but President CYRIL RAMAPHOSA has blamed the tragedy on bars that sell alcohol to underage customers. Sophie Lamotte has more.
19 empty coffins, symbolically representing the bodies of the almost 24 children who died in unexplained circumstances. President CYRIL RAMAPHOSA made the trip to East London. While accepting some responsibility, he blamed underage drinking for the tragedy.
And blame must be laid at the feet of those who are making money off the dreams and the lives of young people of South Africa by breaking the law and selling alcohol to underage children.
Experts are still compiling toxicology reports, but forensic pathologists suggest it may have been caused by something they ate or inhaled. Among those who did manage to escape alive, some said they struggled to breathe and smelled gas as they scrambled to escape the poorly ventilated venue. Concerned parents have been lodging complaints for months about this tavern, complaints that have gone unanswered.
There is indeed a deep-seated frustration with how matters are run in South Africa and how our government has turned into a government that is non-responsive, a government that has deaf ears in as far as responding to crucial matters that are being raised by our communities is concerned.
Parents argue this tragedy could have been avoided had authorities invested in infrastructures for youths in townships, areas that have historically been neglected by the government. The grief and shock of the last 10 days has now turned into anger at a situation that reflects the broader reality of life in post-apartheid South Africa.
Sudan's military leaders sacked the last civilian members of the ruling Sovereign Council, apparently following through on a proposal to make way for a civilian government. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan led a coup that ousted a transitional government last October and sparked months of fatal protests. The main civilian bloc has rejected Burhan's pledge to step aside, dubbing it a tactical ruse aimed at pacifying the international community. Protests demanding the restoration of civilian rule continued on Wednesday, as Vadika Bal tells us.
The blood of the martyrs did not flow in vain. That's what these Sudanese women are chanting as they took to the streets in Khartoum Wednesday to protest against coup leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who they say they don't trust to make way for a civilian government.
The goal is to show that we're all united in the revolution, whatever our differences. It's the youth who sacrifice their lives and keep up the fight, who keep the Sudanese flag flying high.
The women's protest was joined by demonstrators across the capital, staging sit-ins and manning makeshift barricades, as they have done for the last week, despite heavy fatalities amid crackdowns by security forces. The anger comes as Army Chief Burhan, who grabbed power in a coup last October, made a shocking U-turn on Monday, saying the military would step aside for civilian forces to form a transitional government. But the country's main civilian alliance have rejected his pledge, calling it a giant ruse, and encourage the protest to continue.
This speech is vague, full of double meanings. We totally refuse this proposal. We maintain that we want the end of the coup and the installation of an entirely civilian power.
Since the coup, Sudan has been rocked by near-weekly protests, with thousands taking to the streets across the nation. and has grappled with the transition to democratic government since mass uprisings ousted former President Omar al-Bashir in 2019.
Look now at some news in brief. The leaders of DR Congo and Rwanda say that they'll try to de-escalate weeks of diplomatic tensions over rebel clashes in eastern DRC. Talks had been mediated by Angolan President João Lourenço, who's gone as far as to announce a ceasefire, although he hasn't given any details there. The Congolese armies had increasingly aggressive confrontations with M23 rebels. Rwanda's denied Kinshasa's accusations that it's backing the militia. Islamic State extremists have claimed responsibility for a prison break in Nigeria's capital, which led to around 900 escapes. About 440 inmates are still on the run after the raid on the Kuje maximum prison in Abuja on Tuesday night. President Muhammadu Buhari visited the site on Wednesday and said that he was disappointed with the country's intelligence system. Exiled Burkinabe President Blaise Compaoré will return home for the first time since his 2014 ousting. He'd ruled for 27 years and has been invited by the junta that seized power in a coup in January to meet with the interim president this week in a political display of unity. In April, Compaoré was sentenced in absentia by a military court to life in prison for his role in the 1987 murder of his predecessor, Thomas Sankara. There's speculation in local media that he could be granted a pardon as part of the reconciliation process. Now, the recent lifting of economic sanctions on Mali have led to the reopening of trade borders with its West African neighbours. The development offers a desperately needed boost to Senegal, which has been suffering as well because of the penalties imposed on Mali's junta. Sam Bradpeace has more.
The lifting of sanctions on Mali will come as a great boost for the Senegalese economy in the context of high inflation. Before the sanctions were imposed back in January, Mali was Senegal's largest export market and accounted for more than half of Senegal's trade within ECOWAS. These sanctions proved catastrophic for many sectors of the Senegalese economy, including for those involved in the transportation of goods between the two countries. Senegalese truckers are now demanding compensation from the government.
We will do a global evaluation to calculate how much has been lost so that we can claim that amount back. The government must pay us compensation.
It's unclear whether the Senegalese government will answer calls to compensate those drivers, but when you take a look at the wider picture, the lifting of sanctions remains good news. Mali has historically been an important provider of livestock to Senegal, and in the run-up to Tabaski, or Eid el-Adha, many Muslim families feel compelled to sacrifice a sheep. It's very possible that the lifting of sanctions will go some way towards bringing food prices down in the lead-up to that important religious celebration.
Sam Bradpeace there for us. Now, in the city of Zinda in southern Niger, traders have long been used to crossing into Nigeria to find products at competitive prices, but ongoing clashes with extremists and criminal gangs have been hampering trade. Our correspondent reports.
This morning, like every morning, this road is empty.
You know, if there was no insecurity, it wouldn't be like this. At the moment, only humanitarian missions give work to car rental owners like me.
We are in the outskirts of the city of Zinder in Niger, on one of the roads leading to Nigeria. Niger reached a 140 million euros agreement with the African Development Bank to pave 110 kilometers of asphalt roads between Niger and Nigeria. The main goal is to build a second access route to help the transportation sector.
Every product we go and get in Nigeria, we bring here. We need a car to fetch them. It cannot pick up 10 tons at once. You have to take 2 tons at a time. Also, if you need to transport a ton of any product for 10,000 CFA francs, for example, here it will cost you 30 or 40,000.
The state of the roads increases the risk of attacks and carjackings. Getting stuck in one of these holes makes drivers easy targets on both sides of the border. Salifou also used to repair his rental cars in Nigeria. His mechanic in Zinder cannot do much to help. The economy has dramatically slowed down.
Even the vehicles transporting auto parts are getting carjacked. The people who go and buy those parts get arrested and robbed. It's a real problem. That's why people now say they look for car parts locally. They take what they find and assemble them.
The situation is no different in every city near the Nigerian border. Mohamed Umate is a Nigerian expert on international relations. He believes that the security situation depends on the economic development of these regions.
Why do you have insecurity? Because everybody wants to survive, wants to eat. Because the main problem is what? The difference between have and have-nots. And you cannot develop commercial activities, farming activities, without putting infrastructures.
In the north of Nigeria, Boko Haram and other armed groups caused the border with Niger to close a number of times. In the past weeks, criminal gang attacks have intensified in Nigeria, killing dozens of civilians.
And finally, an international collective of dancers have been pushing back against the concept of Afro dance. Members point out that the term glosses over the diversity of dance that comes from Africa. In their performances here in France, they instead try to emphasize the variety and richness of musical and physical expression from the continent.
The Afro Police Tribe Collective seeks to reassert the diversity of African dances. The collective is opposed to the idea of an Afro dance as a whole, as it brushes over the richness and diversity of the multitude of dances that come from Africa.
For me, there is nothing like African dance. There is only dance in Africa. So now, if we look at it from that point of view, then we can see that between Abidjan and Accra and Lagos and Johannesburg and Luanda and Maputo and Maroc and Cairo, different. So there is no way we can uniform all of that.
They embrace traditional as well as contemporary dances and hope to express the energy of different African cities through dance. Founded in Lagos, Nigeria, the collective now brings together more than 12,000 members from all around the globe, with one objective: exchange and mutual respect.
So we have just finished a session that I call Idon. Idon in my language in Nigeria means performative, performance and magic. So we just created magic here through using the dance styles from Lagos, that's the street dance styles from Lagos, and an element and infusion of Afro house from Angola and South Africa.
The collective is prepping for shows with more than 60 artists and technicians. The founder says each of them has a different idea of what Africa means in 2022, and they seek to express it to the rhythm of drums and tambourines.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. See you soon again. Take care.